Let us share the peace. May peace be with all beings. Let us take refuge. I take refuge in the ground of being, within which I live and move and breathe. Let us make the accord. I take sanctuary in the heart of being, accepting all of my delusions in thought, word, or deed, born of ignorance, hatred, and greed. Let us share the thanksgiving. I give thanks for all things, awakening to the interbeing of all nature. May my heart be open and my mind clear. May all be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and may all come to know that peace which is beyond all understanding. Since it is the practice of enlightenment, that practice has no beginning, and since it is enlightenment within the practice, that realization has no end. Hello, my name is Reverend Lily Kiva Brown. I'm a Shusa with the Order of the Dragonfly. That means that I'm a priest in training. I'm currently in seminary with the Blue Lotus School of Mindfulness, which is where Osho Brad has graduated. You'll notice that I'm wearing something slightly different than what Osho Brad wears. That's because I'm still cooking. The topic today is courageous and contagious compassion. And this is a topic I borrowed from a sermon that I gave at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg in October of 2022. That sermon was entitled Courageous Compassion. And you may know compassion as a feeling you experience when you have empathy or perhaps pity for another being. In my study of the Dharma, I've learned a new definition that I feel compelled to adopt for myself. Compassion is a verb. It's an action word. Compassion is the action we take to enact love in the world. It is empathy in motion. It's a feeling of connection to the all. Sometimes the all is the universe, and sometimes the all is the person you push out of the way of a moving vehicle. Buddhist philosopher, peace builder, and educator Daisaku Aikida says, "Courage and compassion are two sides of the same coin. Compassion without courage is not genuine. You may have compassionate thought or impulse, but if you don't do or say anything, it's not real compassion." In Buddhist theory, our true selves lead with compassion. When we are compassionate first and contemplative later, we are acting from the part of ourselves that is always at its best. I'd like to further discuss the idea of courageous and potentially contagious compassion with some examples. The first I'd like to talk about happened, I believe, in the summer of 2022. There was a baseball game for teenage boys. The pitcher accidentally hit the batter, I believe in the head, and the pitcher was absolutely devastated and began to cry. The batter responded by walking onto the pitcher's mound and hugging the pitcher. I invite you to think about that for just a moment, and of the reasons why it was unexpected. We wouldn't generally consider comforting someone who hurt us. We're taught to do the opposite. But in this example, the batter allowed action to flow from a place of understanding that the pitcher was suffering too. The batter risked being ridiculed for it, but he did it anyway. Pema Chodron, a Buddhist nun, you may have heard of her, says in her book When Things Fall Apart, "The path of compassion is the path of cultivating human bravery and kindness." You may recall from the 2020 protests against police brutality that there was a time when the protesters stood in front of police to protect them from the other protesters. The risks in this example were considerable. Not only were the protesters risking their street cred, but also potentially their lives. And why? I would suggest that they did this because they recognized that although the police had been identified as the adversary, or maybe even the enemy, that they were still human beings who deserved protection. This is compassionate action. I would definitely define this as courageous compassion. Both the story about the batter and the protesters showed people that compassion is more important than pride. And I'm hopeful that they encouraged others to act in the same way in similar situations. These examples of courageous compassion spawn something that I think will save the world: contagious compassion. Let's spread that around so that it's everywhere, like glitter after a craft party. I encourage you to remember times when you have allowed compassion to move you to action. Reviewing this in your mind is a practice, and practice is vital to anything you want to have more of in your life. I do not in any way endorse the idea that practice makes perfect, but that practice makes real. By thinking about times when you were performing compassionate action, you are in a way practicing compassion in your mind. The more you do it, the more it feels like the right way to live. And how we think is how we are. As the Buddha said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. What we think, we become. I have a couple examples of taking compassionate action from my own life that I'd like to share, and they span decades. The first two happened in my childhood. In the first example, I call this punching a bully in the stomach. I was in first grade and a girl on the playground was being bullied. I saw this and I walked up to the bully and I punched him in the stomach. The bully stopped being a jerk, and I, of course, got in trouble. I'm not endorsing this kind of intervention. I'm simply acknowledging that it's something that I've experienced, and for the sake of clarification, I have now adjusted my approach to such situations. In example number 2, I freed a bird from mud. As a child, my friends and I freed a bird stuck in the mud. An interesting aside for this example is that it took place in the park that is next to the church where our Osha Mike leads our Monday night in-person meditations. That park was a sacred place to me as a child. You notice in these two examples that there was no forethought involved with the action. Children are known to do this type of thing. They just help when help is needed. They may be a bit reckless about it, as I was with the bully I punched, but children have a tendency to help people without judging first if someone deserves help, or if there are consequences to giving it. They just act. The second two examples happened in my adulthood. There was a time when I helped a couple times, but this is one specific example, helping at an accident scene. My husband and I stopped to help at an accident scene, and we gave the help that we could. Many people had stopped to help. In instances like this, we often see many people offering assistance, and sometimes we're more likely to do so when we see other people helping. That contagious compassion I spoke about earlier. So my next example, giving a stranger some water. This one requires quite a bit more explanation. I was at a show, in a music venue where there was a good deal of alcohol consumption. One individual was literally falling down drunk. Initially, when I saw him, I thought, this guy's going to cause a domino effect. He's going to tumble into the crowd and take everyone down. And I made eye contact with several other people, and we commiserated about how we envisioned this situation proceeding. After a few minutes, I realized that I was being kind of mean about it. And then I remembered, hey, I'm a seminarian, and I'm also a fairly kind person. So I snapped out of that gossip mode, and I went to the bar and I got the guy some water and I gave it to him. After that, some other people followed suit and they started to bring him water and checked on him instead of making fun of him. The act of handing him water sparked a better domino effect. It created that contagious compassion that I was mentioning earlier. Those helped in these stories got into the situations they were in through various means. Some of them were more self-inflicted than others, which I no longer see as relevant. I do my best to operate under the theory that help is given where it's needed, not where it's deserved. After all, how would you define being deserving of help? These stories also contain some dangers. Were the risks worth it to me? You bet your ass they were. Because if no one ever takes action, then where will we be? In these situations, I didn't ask anyone who they voted for, or what they do for a living, and what they've done in their lives to deserve the compassion. And we can all see it that way. We can all do it this way. We all probably have. Let's do it more. And just a side note from the first aid instructor in me, there are times when helping is not appropriate. Like when there's a down power line or a rabid wolf. Not sure how often that'll happen. Or, in my case, a creepy clown. You can't help if you're unconscious from one cause or another. Keep in mind that everyone has an origin story, and suffering begets suffering. This does not mean that I in any way condone harmful behavior. I feel it's important to emphasize that those who seem to lack compassion are the ones who need it the most. And I don't think there is anything more dangerous than a being that feels that they are completely without allies. In the Dragonfly Sangha, we've been taught a type of meditation that I would like to try at the end of this talk that I think helps to expand our compassion, even into situations where we may not have historically felt that we could. Courageous compassion, as you may have deduced from the examples I mentioned today, is compassion in unexpected situations, or provided to those we don't think deserve it. Compassion that happens where we think it ought not to, that dangerous shouldn't. Is there a situation in which compassion should not happen? Are there people who don't deserve it? The more we make compassion unconditional, the closer we come to the true definition of compassion, which is to end suffering where no restrictions apply. There are so many ways we can work to help end suffering in the world. I truly believe that unconditional compassion will save the world. May we all find unconditional love within ourselves and deliver it to the world through acts of unrestricted compassion. May it be so. The moment we receive true and trusting, solid and clear like a diamond, infinite light and life embrace and protect us, liberating us completely. Let us now take the 4 immeasurable vows. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them. Delusions are endless. I vow to end them. The ways of compassion and wisdom are boundless. I vow to embody them. The way is unattainable. I vow to attain it. Let us take the precepts of the community of the vow. I allow my true self to manifest in all aspects of life. I take complete responsibility for my own life and all of my actions. I affirm my personal being and acknowledge it as a path to awakening and freedom. I embrace all aspects of my personal being, including my shadow, so that they may be transformed. I affirm an attitude of openness to my true self, even in the midst of suffering. At this time, I will be offering incense, and I encourage you to do so in your own practice space. Offering incense is a way to acknowledge our connection to the all and to honor beings and people in a tangible way. We now offer incense. Please join me in the spirit of calm. Find a comfortable position to sit in, or lie in, or stand in. You place your hands in this position, which is called the cosmic mudra. Place this, the open part here, just below your belly button. That's the area we call the hara. Now we will do what is called a wheel breath. You envision cosmic light entering your body through this portal when you inhale. For a wheel breath, you visualize the light entering through the hara, traveling up the spine, overflowing on the top of your head and traveling back down the spine and back out through the hara. During this practice, you will first envision that those parts of yourself that are still in need of healing or just may have not quite been incorporated into the whole of who you are like black smoke. The light entering through the hara dissolves this smoke and turns it into pure light. Do this as long as you need until you feel that it has turned the smoke to light. After this, envision the light that emits from your hara goes out into the world to extend compassion to everyone. Imagine then individually that it goes to someone you love. Then imagine that it goes to someone you are troubled by. Come back to allowing the light to enter through the hara and exit through the hara until you hear the bell, and this will take approximately 5 minutes. Let us now enter into the spirit of meditation with the sound of the bell, which will end with the sound of the bell. Take 3 more deep, slow breaths. And then open your eyes gently to end our meditation. The more you do this meditation, the more you can do it outside of your mind, the more you can make it an action, the more you can make it real. Thank you for joining me today. For more information about our Sangha, I invite you to visit dragonflysangha.com or asksenseitony.com. May you have a week filled with peace and joy.